What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining me. I am Ruthie Polinsky. We are getting you ready for game one of the NBA Finals. It's the Miami Heat versus the LA Lakers, and we have a lot to talk about tonight. So we decided to take it to our digital platform so that we had no time limits. We could talk all the way up until tip-off at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern tonight. And I am so excited to now welcome in our very good friend and basically our Heat insider, we can call him. He is the beat writer for the Sun Sentinel, our friend Ira Winderman. Ira, is always so good to have you. And normally I would have you on my Sunday night show and I would kind of interview you, ask you these questions. But I kind of want tonight to be more a little bit of a discussion so we can kind of bounce off each other a little bit more here. Ira, you know this better than anyone, but there are so many storylines to talk about with this matchup. And I think when you were watching Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, ESPN, the national media, they wanted so badly it to be that Boston, LA. You know, they were teasing they were teasing the rivalry Game 7.
History,
so bad. But you know what? Here we are, and it's the Miami Heat. And as Jimmy Butler likes to say, no one picked them to be here. No one saw them making it this point. And that's kind of the first topic that I want to talk about is they are the underdogs, whether you want to talk about it as that way or not. They absolutely are, and they are feeding off of that mentality.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been the case all season. Remember, you're talking about a number 5 seed in the playoffs. No number 5 seed has ever won the NBA Finals, even been to the NBA Finals, and then sort of this road they've had. I mean, there is no road team in the bubble, but they were the road team against Indiana. They were the road team against Milwaukee. They were the road team against Boston. So I guess you've had 3 upsets already. So their thought is, if we've had 3, why not have 4?
And I think what we've heard when we talk to the team about this underdog mentality, and my favorite soundbite was from Jimmy, which I'm going to play in just a second. But I think this team, as much as they say, hey, we deserve to be here and we know that we want to be here and that we can win this, they kind of like that no one's picking them. This is kind of the way that this team has gotten to where they are. And Jimmy Butler has been the one to kind of preach that message. And it's kind of sending a message to, the fans, but more so his teammates, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. For the Heat, it's all about them. It's all about who they are and what they can be. So when you go through this whole process, Ruthie, you can see it. They love, in a way, the outside noise that Eric Spoelstra usually said he hates because anything to motivate them. But they know who they are. And again, they don't look at this as, can they win 4 out of 7 against the Lakers? They look at that, can they win 1 game tonight against Los Angeles? Then you go to the next game. They have been in the bubble now for 3 months. And yet, over those 3 months, they've taken it day by day by day. And you can see that's the result of their play. They didn't look at Game 6 against Boston as a closeout game. They looked at Game 6 against Boston as a game they needed to win, just like they're looking at Game 1 tonight.
Udonis Haslem, who is really just another coach on this team and has been such a vocal leader and such a huge important part of this season's journey. And when you look at what this team has gone through, the season shutdown, being able to kind of maintain this chemistry virtually, which was such a struggle for the sports world and for so many just humans in general. And I think Udonis Haslem is kind of that guy that's just been through it all, and he's just kind of saw maybe a little bit from afar what this team's potential was. And in a way, he's the glue. And I think that's kind of the mentality. Now, I want to play that Jimmy Butler soundbite of him talking about the underdogs.
I just don't think that we're underdogs. I don't. So what that nobody picked us to be here? That's okay. Pretty sure nobody's picking us to win either. That's okay. But we understand that. We embrace that. Because at the end of the day, we truly don't care. We're just going to go out here and compete, play together like we always have.
When you look into the playoffs and you look into each game, each series, it's key just to be on the same page and have one goal and not just to win a game, put ourselves in position to win a game.
I don't feel the pressure. I don't think there is much pressure. At the end of the day, we're just playing, competing at the game of basketball. That's my mindset, my mentality. We've been through a very unique season. We're going past 365 days for one season with the pause with the fall.
All right, so there you have it. And I guess, Ira, when you think about this team as underdogs, the reason they are underdogs, how many times can we say that word? It's because you look at the other team and you have LeBron James and you have Anthony Davis and you have these superstars.
Perfect.
The Heat have really great players, but there's no superstar on that team. And of course, we have to talk about this LeBron matchup. He's the greatest player in the world, one of the greatest players of all time. How do you stop him?
Well, I think you hit it on the head right there, Ruthie, when you talked about the Heat have all-stars. Bam was an all-star this year. Jimmy Butler was an all-star this year. Goran was an all-star a couple of years ago. The question is, do the Heat have superstars? Right now, they don't. They're not at the level of an Anthony Davis or LeBron James because that comes from a championship or playoff level body of work. Anthony Davis getting to that level right now. But look, the LeBron challenge is like no other. A bunch of people have told me, well, why can't they win this series? They stopped the MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo in the second round, and yet you saw the flaws and limitations in Giannis. And Ruthie, to me, Giannis is where LeBron was in the 2011 finals for the Heat, when he couldn't get over the hump, when he had to learn how to be a winner. He had to learn how to be a more diverse player. He had to learn how to hit consistently the three-point shot. So they already have the finished product in LeBron. And the difference also, Ruthie, is the desperation. Giannis knew he would have more chances, maybe more with Milwaukee. Who knows? Maybe more with the Heat someday after 2021 free agency. But the clock is ticking on LeBron. I mean, yes, he was at an incredibly high level now, but he knows he's in the wind down portion of his career. So I think when you look at LeBron this season, you see a player maybe more driven, honestly, than any other player in this postseason. Yes, they all won a championship. They've all been in Disney, whoever remains now, for 3 months, for over 90 days. But I don't think there's a single player in the bubble, and certainly not a single player on the court tonight, who is as driven with reason as LeBron James is.
The Heat, on the other hand, have nothing to lose. LeBron maybe has his legacy here a little bit on the line. And you know he gets asked about his legacy every press conference. What does that mean to him? How does he want his career to be remembered? And there are so many ways that we can talk about this kind of his role and the symbolism of this being, I guess 9 months after the death of Kobe Bryant, that the Lakers are now there. And that's, for LeBron to do that for him, let's add that to the motivation, I guess, for the King. And, I think also Jimmy Butler said it best. Again, he's a walking soundbite, this guy. But he said, you can't win a championship without beating LeBron. You're going to have to face him. You're going to have to see him at some point. And he said, that's not an easy task, but if anyone can do it, it's the Miami Heat.
I don't know if I would go that far, because I think there are other teams that might have been more equipped in the East, to be honest. Look, what the Heat has, and they've used this all year, even though it hasn't been the case in some of the rotations, is strength in numbers. If you ask the Heat or ask a Heat player, do you have a LeBron stopper? No one wants to be that, because no one wants to absorb the wrath of saying you're that and then seeing the result. But the Heat have LeBron options. They have options in the starting lineup in Jay Crowder, in Bam Adebayo, and in Jimmy Butler. They have options off the bench, of course, in Andre Iguodala, who's already faced LeBron James. I think it was 5 times, or actually 4 times in the NBA Finals. So they have that also going for them. They have Derrick Jones Jr., we haven't seen lately. Might see him tonight in Game 1. They have sort of what Eric Spoelstra would say, they have a menu of options. No definitive LeBron stopper, but they can go big. They can go small. They can go quickness. They can go bulk. That's what they'll do tonight. I don't think any Heat game plan says we're going to shut down LeBron. I think it's typical, honestly, Ruthie, of most of the game plans of teams who played LeBron when he was on the Heat and when he's on the Cavaliers. Limit the other guys. So if LeBron gets his, and if Anthony Davis gets his, will there be a third Laker who gets some? That could be the key tonight and going forward in this series.
I would just to rewind a little bit. We talk about LeBron's motivation in this series. He kind of wants to beat the Heat, right? I mean, he kind of wants to stick it to him. And you know what? I think it goes both ways, because I think Pat Riley kind of wants to beat LeBron. They are, of course, going to sing each other's praises to the media, and they want to talk about how great each other are. And I think there is, of course, so much mutual respect that we are going to play that sound for you here in a second. But There's this rivalry here that we can talk about for a little bit, right, Ira?
Yeah, Ruthie, but I want to be fair to the whole thing. I think if you were to go back and forth, and this was debated in Sports Talk Radio and other places today, and you were to ask me, does LeBron want to beat Pat Riley more than Pat Riley wants to beat LeBron? Not that Pat Riley is coaching or playing. I think Pat Riley wants to beat LeBron more. I think what happened in 2014 in that hotel room in Las Vegas, when Pat really couldn't get inside the door, because we all knew now LeBron already had his decision made to go back to Cleveland, that sticks with Pat Riley. And Pat said the right things after. He had to go back home. He had to make it right. That's what you say. But I think for Pat Riley, he'd like to sort of stick it to him one more time for the way he felt betrayed in that hotel in Las Vegas in July 2014. On the other hand, Ruthie, I think when you look at LeBron James, he's moved on from Pat Riley to bigger things. You have this sort of Michael Jordan thing that'll never go away. And it's not like LeBron's going to win his 6th championship this year. But if he does it with 3 different teams in 3 dynamically different situations, that's a legacy builder. I think LeBron James, if you were asking me sort of to rate LeBron's motivation for this series, I would say number 1, getting that championship ring. Number 2, the season and the Kobe Bryant impact. He realizes history. He realizes meaning of this moment. So I would say that number 2. And I think number 3, just winning it with the 3rd franchise, so that people aren't going, well, he won with the Heat because he had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And he won with the Cavaliers because he had Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. And now he's going to win because he has Anthony Davis. No, he wins because he's LeBron and all those other guys came along for the ride and not the other way around.
Pat Riley is one of the most respected people in the NBA. I think that's well understood just because of what he's been able to accomplish and the journey that his career has taken him on. There's a lot of respect for Pat Riley from players past and present. Let's play that for you now.
LeBron has done when he moved on to Cleveland and to here, it really is just a testament to his greatness and his commitment to winning. And to be able to do it with different rosters and uniforms is really remarkable.
I think being around, Riles and Spo, D Wade and UD, and just to name a few, being a part of that culture allowed me to grow, allowed me to see, what it takes to not only compete for a championship but also to win a championship. I fit that culture as well because of how hard I work. So it was a perfect match for those 4 years.
Hey, LeBron, it's Bill Orr.
A perfect match for those 4 years. And, Jimmy Butler, I thought we were going to hear a little bit of Jimmy Butler talking about Pat Riley there and just kind of his respect for that man. And his courting process, Ira, we learned this week, went very different than the courting process of LeBron to get to Miami. And I think Jimmy had heard about the Heat. He knew what the culture was like here, and he said, sign me up. And that's really what we learned about that story this week, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, Eric Spoelstra told a story on Media Day at Disney about how when he met with Jimmy, they sat at the dinner, they had this whole pitch prepared, what they were going to do, and Jimmy just leans across the table and goes, yeah, I'm signing, I'm in. And they're thinking, man, we went through all this video, we put together all these props, we had our PowerPoint, we had everything. And then you realize he was sold by Dwayne Wade. He was sold by what he saw that night when he came down, the Heat's last home game of Dwayne's last season, and saw the outpouring of love for a franchise icon. And the thing about Jimmy Butler is he was second fiddle when he was in Chicago to veteran players. Then he goes to Minnesota and he has Karl Anthony Towns, who is the leading man. Then he goes to Philadelphia and it's Joel Embiid and it's Ben Simmons. He wants his team. And the interesting thing, Ruthie, and I think this talks to who Jimmy Butler is, when he got his team, he didn't demand everything. He didn't demand the ball in every possession. He didn't demand he be a leading scorer every game. He didn't demand special treatment. All he demanded was a culture and players who were willing to come along for what might be the most difficult and challenging ride of their careers. And that's what he's got. So, you know what? I have a lot of media friends, I'm sure you do too, Ruthie, who you mentioned this Heat culture, and they sort of go to you, enough already, we get it. And then Ruthie, as long as you've been down here, as long as I've been down here, you realize it is something tangible. It's not just a marketing slogan that next week, next month, next year, the Heat are going to change. This has been in place since 1995 when Pat Riley arrived. It's going on a quarter century and beyond. It's real. Jimmy knew that, and he proved prescient.
Me coming to Miami in March and only covering one Heat game and then covering this team virtually, I've learned a lot about Heat culture, and it kind of took me a while. Kind of took me a little bit of some time, and obviously I'd heard about it just from covering other NBA teams, but it took me a while to kind of really grasp it. And it is, like you said, tangible is such a great word to use because you can really feel it when you listen to these guys talk. And the word that keeps getting repeated is accountability. And guys are held accountable. And I think what Jimmy loves so much about this place is that he can be himself, which he has said, hasn't really been the case maybe in other places. Now, I just want to rewind a little bit before Jimmy was drafted. And just kind of recap his story to where he is now in the NBA Finals for the first time. He was kicked out of the house when he was 13 years old, homeless. He figured out a way to get to a junior college, somehow got noticed by Marquette. I say somehow, of course, his hard work and his talent was there. But this is a kid, this is a man now who overcame all odds. And this is a story, I think, of why sports are so important. Jimmy Butler embodies sports and the significance of how it can help people and how it can help people find their place in the world. And I think that's something that's really incredible about Jimmy's story, and it doesn't really get told enough. And now he's really found his place, and I think we've been able to see his true colors and true personality really flourish here. And of course, he's playing basketball at this extremely high level. Let's go to Jimmy about why he loves it so much in Miami.
I think there's a lot of nerves for a lot of people, including myself. This is the first time being here. So I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable. And we've been playing a certain way this entire year. I'm not getting away from that. I think that's winning basketball for us. Me making sure that everybody's involved. I think that's part of my role on this team. So we'll take it as the game goes, and then we'll figure it out. But I mean, I'm sure before the game, UD, Dre, Spo, they'll definitely tell me what to look for and how to start, I guess.
Team, and that's something that I think he's really been able to solidify here. But as we mentioned, he talked about earlier in that press conference, he talked about, this is my home, this is where I'm comfortable, this is where I'm allowed to be myself. Moving on to past Jimmy Butler, because I do want to touch on, there's so many storylines, so many players to talk about, and we're getting close to the game time. But let's talk about the young stars, Ira, because this is a team with this young core group, and we'll focus on Bam, Tyler, and Duncan. But of course, Bam just the Lakers head coach said this perfectly. He said, Bam Adebayo is not a budding superstar. He is a superstar. And we've seen that kind of play out in so far in this playoffs. Tyler Hero is breaking rookie records. Duncan Robinson has had a little bit of a roller coaster of a playoffs, but he's come up in some really big moments. And these guys talked about, they went to they're products of Kentucky, they're products of Michigan. They played in these big games where they felt like they were in their Super Bowl, and they are ready for these moments. And we've really been able to see that pay off throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, when you look at this team, remember, this is crazy. A year ago today, the Miami Heat went up to Flagler University in West Palm Beach to training camp. So most NBA people are saying rookies aren't rookies anymore. They went through about 70 games or so. Then they had a 4-month break to study tape, to work on their games, to go to the Heat's individual sessions when allowed by COVID. Then they came back for another training camp, basically the training camp of their second season. I don't think Tyler Hero would have looked the same way if the playoffs were in April and May and maybe June. I think he's had that growth period. I think Duncan Robinson, the same thing, to learn a little bit more from the game. So the young players had the extra time also to sort of grow on the job and grow in the interim. That's the one thing about the Heat. We hear this also when you hear about the Heat's developmental program. And again, you get the eye rolls from people who don't understand it. But that never stopped during the layoff. That never stopped in camp. Right now, people go to me, why do they even have Kyle Alexander and Gabe Vincent, players on 2-way contracts up in Orlando, when they could have brought other team personnel or coaches in? Because they can teach, they can develop, they can get these guys ready for next season. That's what happened with the Heat's young players. Now, that's not to say that Tyler Hero wasn't a bucket before he got here. Spoke to Coach Calipari yesterday, and he said this kid's confidence was NBA level before he left high school. He just has that quote-unquote swagger. Duncan Robinson's the opposite. He had to learn to develop his swagger and have the confidence. He's done that also. And I just have a feeling, Ruthie, and we'll know soon enough, maybe shortly after tip-off, I still think there's a place in this series for Kendrick Nunn for what he can do offensively and to a degree with some of the smaller Lakers backups, what he can do defensively also. So I think you will continue to see the Heat youth. Eric Spoelstra said it perfectly in his pregame press conference tonight. He says, we got Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder because we wanted some veterans to help balance the young kids. But they never wanted veterans to push the young kids out of the way.
It's so spot on. And it's really been their technique to elevate these young players. And, you know, we could go on and on about those veterans with Jay and Andre and Goran and all these different guys that have been able to really make the most out of this kind of off-balance team when you look at the ages here. And I think it's just been really cool to see these guys show up in these big moments. Let's hear from those young guys real quick.
To me, I feel like I'm out there hooping and just doing the right things and making the right plays. And just holding myself accountable. You know, we're in the playoffs. It's this is win or go home. So, you know, when you have that type of mindset, you got to go out there and back that up.
I'm incredibly grateful to be in the situation. Humbled by it in many ways. You know, it's still kind of been surreal, but you know, certainly not content with where I am either. You know, I'm excited for this opportunity to compete and hopefully leave my mark on this series.
With our team, we have a bunch of guys like that who were doubted, who were looked over, and I think that's, you know, the chip on our shoulders that we have.
That chip on their shoulder that we keep hearing about. Okay, quickly, Ira, because I want to make sure we're settled for game time. Let's take some fan questions if we have any. I got a few on Twitter. I'm not sure if we have any that are coming in on Facebook. I'm seeing a lot of let's go Heat, let's go Lakers. But I wanted to go on Twitter really quick and just get your take on this question. Will the zone stick?
The zone will be a product of its own effectiveness, how much they go to it. So will they go to the zone, Ruthie? Absolutely. They will have to, because I've been sort of sitting here for days going, who's going to guard Anthony Davis? And obviously, while everyone says the answer is Bam Adebayo, I checked and he will not get additional fouls during this series. And you don't want him in foul trouble. So there was something about that. So will the zone stick? It'll stick if the Lakers miss three-pointers. But if you get someone like Danny Green coming back to what he was against the Heat, San Antonio, what he was for Toronto in their championship, you'll go away from it. So I think the zone will be part of how much the Heat want to play it. But more than anything, Ruthie, I think it'll be a factor of how much will the Lakers shooters allow them to play it.
On.
Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I was muted. Let's try one more. Let's do one more. Who is going to guard the King, LeBron James?
As I sort of talked about before, probably everyone and anyone. I would assume they'll probably start with Jimmy Butler based on matchups. The Lakers just announced they're going back to their big lineup. So Dwight Howard's going to start at center. So you have all these moving parts. So let's sort of go through the lineup. If you have Dwight Howard starting at center, Bam probably starts on him. You're probably going to start Jay Crowder and sort of see how that plays out on Anthony Davis. Well, you know you're not putting, God bless him, Duncan Robinson or Goran Dragic on LeBron James. So again, Jimmy Butler, who's played LeBron very well over the years, but has to be concerned about foul trouble. I think they go in that direction. So I think in the starting lineup, they're limited. But again, they will churn. So I'm not so sure, even though Jimmy Butler might start on LeBron James, he might not play the most minutes on LeBron James in this game or in this series. That still might wind up being Andre Iguodala. Keep an eye out at the Heat's first substitution for the substitution patterns. Do they go big with the first one? Does Kelly Olynyk come back so they'd have two guys to go against the Lakers bigs if JaVale McGee comes in? Or do the Heat go smaller and say, okay, King James, this is why we got Andre Iguodala, and then put Andre in there and see if he can sort of recapture some of the magic of Warriors Cavaliers?
Iguodala And we really saw Andre Iguodala step up in that really big moment. And in my opinion, I think he changed Game 6. I think that was kind of when he came in and was that spark off the bench. That was really kind of the game changer. And you saw, man, this guy has playoff experience if I've ever seen it. Okay, Ira, let me get your big number one overarching key to the series. How do the Heat win this championship?
I think, Ruthie, more than anything, and I know it's going to sort of sound like blasphemy, but I think it's how do they contain Anthony Davis? I think almost the entire NBA is known. This is LeBron's 9th appearance in the last 10 NBA Finals. If you're going to try to win a championship, you have to have a LeBron strategy. We've seen teams go out and get players and do that, including the Warriors with Andre Iguodala. So teams have done that before. San Antonio went out, tried to get defenders against LeBron. But now the new part of the equation is Anthony Davis coming in here. And he's been very good in these playoffs. And he is so unique. So here's the problem. If you start the game with Bam Adebayo on him, well, Anthony Davis is going to go outside, start draining threes, and all of a sudden Bam can't be the goaltender, the last line of defense. You have that issue. However, if you start Jay Crowder on Anthony Davis, he's going to take him in the post, use his height advantage. What are we talking? 5, 6, 7 inches with his length, and that's going to be a problem. I think priority one, not that Eric Spoelstra or anyone in the Heat staff would say it, is Anthony Davis. Do they have a strategy for him? And that's when you realize he is so much more of a complete player than Giannis Antetokounmpo. What Giannis does, he does great. But when Anthony Davis is at the top of his game, which isn't always the case, I think he's the more complete player. I think he's the more versatile player. And I think that is job one for the Heat, both tonight and in this series.
This is a viewer saying any team playing as a team can beat anyone, which I think we've really seen for this Miami Heat team. They've just played a little bit together. We will see. This is the ultimate test. I'm not going to ask you what your series pick is for this because I don't think I'm going to like your answer, Ira.
Look, people always ask me about this and why aren't you a Heat fan and who you're rooting for and all that. And I can tell you in my house, I got plenty of Heat fans. But if I'm going to look at this analytically, Ruthie, about the talent level on each team and what could happen and should happen, the Lakers simply are more talented. I love your approach of the ensemble gritty teams can win. And maybe in Hoosiers they can, but we're not in Hickory anymore. We're in a bubble in Disney, and it's a different world for this Heat team. So to me, that goes off the table a little. I always say this when people ask me on radio about my thoughts, and I say, I would love to put someone on the lie detector and ask Pat Riley or Eric Spoelstra or Andy Ellisberg, who's the better team right now? And they love their kids. They love their guys. They love the grit. They love the spunk. Maybe something happens and they find a way to pull it out. But the Lakers go into this series as the better team. Can the Heat find an upset? Can they craft something? I'm not doubting them. Not after Indiana, after Milwaukee, and after Boston. But right now, before the first shot, before the first opening jump, you'd have to say on paper the Lakers are the better team. And now we'll see how much, like we've talked for the last half hour, how much that underdog spirit can carry over.
Disney World is a magical place. Anything can happen. Ira Winderman of the Sun Sentinel, thank you so much for taking your pregame time to spend with us right here on NBC6 on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Thank you, the viewers, for watching us and joining us. Enjoy the game. Let's go Heat.
And don't be goofy. Thanks, guys.